Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnoc, Jeff Upson with you here. And Jeff, the storms came in, but we were able to get some wrestling in over the weekend. And obviously, we're geared up and ready to go for the team tournament, which starts tomorrow. First and foremost, were you able to make it back? I know, obviously, PA Power streaming some of these tournaments from over the weekend, but able to make it back and safely?
I made it back in one piece. All the folks that were out, Matt and Jess, were out doing the Fred Bell and the Coal Cracker. So yeah, we were able to make it back okay, and a lot of good action from over the weekend. And I feel like we're diving right into the postseason. Right, the dual team districts is coming up across all the districts in the state. So excited for this weekend, but we got a lot to cover until before the weekend, right? And there was a lot of good action. There was a couple good matches coming into this past weekend when we talked about Norwin and Franklin Regional. But yeah, we'll recap some of the individual stuff before we start talking about the team tournament.
Yeah, Franklin Regional got the win over Norwin. Cannon McMillan, the win over Trinity. A couple of the big matches that we were highlighting on the last show. But to your point, Jeff, let's go into the three really main tournaments a lot of the WPIL teams were at this past weekend. Cannon McMillan, they had made a switch. Originally, they were supposed to go out to the Coal Cracker tournament, but with the weather, they were able to get into the Fred Bell tournament where they ended up coming away as the team champion and looked pretty impressive in doing so, and started at 107 with Lee Dreschman, who won by major decision in the finals.
Yeah, Lee Dreschman came out and beat a very tough Van Ward from Union City, a guy who has been in the top 10 in the state all season. And he beats him up 16-4. So I was impressed with Dreschman. I did, obviously, we were disappointed that Canamac wasn't going to the Coal Cracker, but having them at the Fred Bell allowed us to see some of these matchups against some of the Northwest regional guys. There was a lot of uh, clashing of Trinity and Canamac. You know, they had just wrestled and they've
Yeah.
seen each other multiple times throughout the year. So there was a couple of those. Um, the match that a lot of people, now I was at Ultimate Warrior, but the match that a lot of people were talking about from Fred Bell in anticipation was the 114 match because you had Chase Karenbauer from Grove City, who was number one in the state, versus Nick McGarity from Peters Township, who in AAA was number one in the state. And Chase Karenbauer just took it to him. I mean, he looked on a different level. He ends up getting a tech fall 19-1. He got a takedown and back points to end it. Very impressive by Chase Karenbauer. So McGarity, he's going to slide back to number two because Braden Wenrick of Northampton has just dropped to 114. But, 114 is pretty much, I wouldn't say it's wide open in AAA, but it's a little bit more open than AA, that's for sure.
Yeah, and obviously Karen Bauer winning a Powerade title already this season, trying to get to the top of the podium. And, obviously, I think he was a little surprised last year, right, not winning a state title.
Yeah.
So he's out on a mission without a doubt, and definitely that jumped out off the screen, right? The way that not only that he won, but winning by technical fall in doing so. But yeah, a lot of as far as WPL guys in the finals, Cale Yannick of Moon was a second place finisher. Collier Hartman of Cannon McMillan, he was a champion. Emmett Wolf of McGuffey was a champion over Zach Regati of Moon, as well as Cooper Dietz of West Mifflin, a champion. Liam Costa, a runner-up finish. Mario Hutcherson of Kiski, a champ. Elijah Brown, Cooper Roskowski do not wrestle each other. They finished 1-2, but Elijah Brown won by injury default, and Casey Wilson of Laurel finished in second place. But outside of those championships, Jeff, there were a lot of good matchups, semifinals, as well as into the consolations, where you saw a lot of WPL guys facing one another.
Yeah, and there was a lot of head-to-heads. Doing the West regional rankings this week, just finished them up today. There was a lot of head-to-heads, there was a lot of common opponents. Dom Canali ends up, he's wrestling at 133, but he's going to end up going back down to 127. He takes third. He lost to John Emma at TriCAD, ends up teching him for third and fourth. So that was a big reversal for him. Another big reversal was Collier Hartman beating Dalton Wenner. They had wrestled at the Powerade. Wenner beat him there. This time, however, Hartman beats him up 14-5. So I think Collier, I'm not saying the weight cut was a struggle at first, but I think it definitely took a toll on him a little bit, and we're starting to see him settle into 139, and I think that clearly shows why he was able to reverse that loss to now a major decision, right? Beating a very tough Dalton Winter, a guy who was a Midwinter Mayhem runner-up, so that's a good win for him there. Cooper Dietz, another one from West Mifflin. This is his second straight Fred Bell championship. I don't know what it is about Fred Bell, but he wrestles very well there. He beat a very tough Zach Turbeville of Slippery Rock in the finals 10-3. That was a good weight. You had a lot of AA and AAA guys that were kind of middle to top tier guys, and Dietz was able to get the win there. As you mentioned with Hutcherson, he had a really good matchup with Tavio Hoos from New York, who he beats 16-4. Hoos is a guy who has been very good in New York and actually has wrestled in Pennsylvania a lot. Elijah Brown, Cooper Roskowski, we're not going to see that one here like we did last year, but I have a good feeling we're going to see it a couple more times throughout the individual season, postseason, specifically the West and state finals, which we had seen last year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And should be a great one as that continues on. Other WPIAL matchups, another one that stuck out in the consolations, Jeff Parker Jennings knocking off Bryce Thomas of Moon. He ended up finishing in 6th place, losing to Angelo Bonai of Central Valley. But that is big for Jennings as far as seeding when it comes to AAA 107.
Yeah, and that was one where, Jennings, that was a big win for him, right? Coming down to 107. And for Bonai, he had lost to Thomas at least 2, if not 3 times already this season, and gets that win over him for the 5th place, beats him in sudden victory. So, not the best of performances for Bryce Thomas, but certainly for Bonai, I think that's a good win for him. Another one, LaShawn Haley from West Mifflin. He had a good win over Rocky Kyle of Northeast. That was an 11-10 match. So just a really good balanced tournament. I think Victor Bonus beating Mason Calgaro from Cannon Mac at 152 was a big win for him. So, it's nice to see some of this AA, AAA mix up, not only in the WPIAL, but from across the state. So, yeah, it's a good tournament. I love the Fred Bell. Wes Phipps and his crew up there at Grove City, they were very hospitable to us, and we had a good time up there.
Looking at the other tournaments from this past weekend, the Ultimate Warrior tournament, Derry ended up finishing in 2nd place in that one, falling just shy to the champion Reynolds. And you look at some of their results, and we had a win for Mason Kiesecker at 107. We also had Patrick Bolger of Derry winning at 114 pounds. Mason Horwat was a champion as well. So 3 champs total for Derry, which led them to that 2nd place finish. You look at other WPIAL wrestlers in the finals. Drake McClure of Bentworth finished in 2nd place, dropping a decision to Tanner Gano of Bald Eagle area in the final. And that's really it for the WPIAL as far as finalists go, but Derry well represented on the medal stand.
Yeah, Derry looked good all weekend, and let's keep in mind that's without Brady Brown too, who's sidelined with an injury. Had he been there, they probably would have won that championship title. But overall, I love the 1-2 punch there from Derry with Kiesecker and Bolger. Really, really solid performance from both of them. The one, Drake McClure lost to Tanner Gano, but it was a good match. The other match that I really liked was 160 pounds with Owen Ifchik and Ewan Olson. Those two have wrestled a handful of times, right? Ifchik takes this one 1-0. Those guys are going to probably meet a couple more times throughout the team and individual postseason. So that was a good performance by both of them. Overall, just, I feel like when a Derry wrestler was up, there was always a chance that they were going to get a win there. Like Dylan Bateman beating Heverly from Central Mountain. That's a state qualifier at 127. He beats him 2-1. That's a good win for him. Overall, they just have a lot of depth, and that's going to segue into our district dual team analysis and preview. But Derry they have a lot of weapons, right? And they have some guys on the bench too that they can kind of move around. We know how good those other guys are. We know how good those Keysackers and Mason Horwat, we know how good they are, but they have so many other tools and weapons in their arsenal that it's going to be hard for anyone to stop them.
The other tournament from this past weekend that we had previewed the previous week was the Thomas Automotive Tournament, and that's where Burrell was, and they ended up winning the title by 1.5 over Huntington and by 3 points over Chestnut Ridge. So Burrell comes away with the title. And you look at some of the results from the tournament as far as champions go. And Burrell does not come away with a champion. Cam Baker does finish in second. Russell's Dom Deputy of Chestnut Ridge again, this time drops an 8-1 decision. Jacob Stewart at 139. He finished in second place for Burrell. And around the WPIAL, we also had Mason Wright finish as a champion at 133 from Best Center. And Jonna Erdley of Fraser finishing in as a champion at 152. As well as Colin White, Jeff. Colin White at 285 with the fall in the finals.
Yeah. Don't forget about Colin White. I know you like to forget the heavyweights.
No doubt.
Cam Baker, we were kind of talking at the Ultimate Warrior because this happened to Dom before. He loses to Dingus of Penns Valley and then comes back at LHAC and beats him. Beat him pretty good, too, in that second match. He loses to Cam Baker. This is their third time meeting this year. He beat him the first time, King of the Mountain, loses to him in that dual meet at the Ultimate Duels, and then beats him this week at the Thomas tournament. So, for Dom, it's just about getting consistency, right? Cam Baker is obviously a talented wrestler, and I think we're going to see that one probably at least one more, maybe two more times in the postseason. But, for Burrell, I thought they're starting to come on, right? And it's just in time, right? They're starting to get guys like Jacob Stewart wrestling where they need to be. Bertucci took third. He beat a very tough Dawson Schaefer in the third place match there. So, I'm excited to see how, the Burrell magic, if you will, going into this week and seeing if it can continue. And, I know Derry's certainly not looking past Burrell, right? Because quite frankly, Burrell's had their number, right, the last couple of years. So while the stars seem to align for Derry to maybe win a WPIAL team title, Burrell's certainly going to be in the mix, and they're not going to go down without a fight. So I was impressed with them. I was impressed with Jonah Erdley getting a good win at 152. And Colin White, he just dominated. It wasn't the deepest weight by far at heavyweight. I think White was clearly ahead of the rest of the field here, but it's always nice to see somebody dominate like they did.
Yeah, and also impressed with Best Center, right? Mason Wright had the major in the finals, but then you have Malachi Peak and Noah Lehue both finishing in third place, and then you also had Alex Medlin, finishing in fifth place. So I thought Best Center as well had a really good tournament.
Yeah, I mean they're a good team. We had talked about them and just they have a lot of hammers, right? They have some guys that they were really solid. Even like Shane Cronin at 127 as well. He placed seventh. So yeah, they have a team full of. They're a solid team, and in AA, in the WPIAL and really across the state, I mean, having a good top to bottom lineup, really just having a full lineup, and then having some solid guys throughout that are gonna get some wins. Win toss up matchups, not give up bonus points. That's critical, and that's huge, right? So yeah, I think Beth Center is a team to watch.
Well, Jeff, this coming week here, starting tomorrow, we have the WPIAL team tournament. And first and foremost, got to give kudos to the steering committee for obviously acknowledging the fact that, hey, we got this big storm coming and not putting those opening round matches on Monday and trying to figure out how to reschedule. They put them right on Wednesday at 4:30, feeding into the top four seeds in both AA and AAA and just putting them at those sites. So kudos to the committee for thinking ahead with this storm that we had this past weekend. But where do you want to start, AA or AAA?
Let's start in AA. That's a little easier, I feel.
Well, it certainly seems a little more like chalk anyway, as far as where you think the results will happen. But looking at the bracket, obviously the four host schools, Burrell, Derry, McGuffey, and Laurel. I think all season we've been talking about Burrell, then Derry, then McGuffey, 1, 2, 3 in that order. And then it was just a matter of who would get that host site. And it was
Mhm.
really a toss up between Laurel and Jefferson Morgan. Really both schools, it's two opposite ends, right? So whichever team didn't get the host is
Right.
going to travel quite a bit. But it can't go wrong with the choice of Laurel. They've had a great season so far. But you look at these quadrants first, and let's look at that Burrow quadrant. You mentioned best center, so these two teams just saw each other over the weekend and could potentially wrestle. But it would be a good one between best center and Quaker Valley. Knock and Southmoreland feed into Burrow with the winners wrestling at 7:15.
Yeah, and looking at that quadrant, and to be honest with you, I think the steering committee did a great job on a lot of fronts. I think just talking about moving the matches, waiting so that way teams could get some of their duels in on the weekend, because over the weekend there was teams that would not have qualified because they didn't have enough team dual meets under their belt, so they allowed it to go through the weekend. So that was, I thought, also pretty accommodating. But yeah, that top quadrant there. Obviously, I like Burrow coming out of there, but best center, again, we had just talked about it. We saw them at the Tom's tournament with Burrow, so got to see some head-to-heads potentially. But I think Knock and Southmoreland maybe a little bit of a toss-up, but I'll probably go. I don't know. I'll probably go Southmoreland, but I have Burrow coming out to wrestle best center.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I have Burrow making it into the semifinals. But definitely think best center is going to give them a run as far as being able to match up with some really stud wrestlers and making the score a little bit closer. Based on the talent that they have. You look at the second quadrant. Jefferson Morgan takes on Avella, Avonworth, and Freedom feed into Laurel. And Jeff, I mean, to me, it seems like Laurel and Jefferson Morgan on that collision course.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think this is going to be a really good matchup should it happen. As you mentioned, it was really you flip a coin between Jefferson Morgan and Laurel. When you look at the opening round matches, Avonworth and Freedom, I think Laurel takes care of whoever comes out of there. Your Avella Eagles, I don't think they're gonna. I think Jefferson Morgan's got a good team, but then again, Avella's got a couple. They have a few individuals that are pretty solid, right? I don't know if they have enough depth or enough firepower to hang with Jefferson Morgan. So I am going to go with Jefferson Morgan and Laurel. And to be honest with you, I think Laurel is going to come out from that. But I think of the quarterfinals, this is probably going to be one of the best ones. Is Laurel and Jefferson Morgan? I think that's probably going to be one of the better ones. Because you look at the rest of them, and honestly, Burrow and best center may be that second best one, to be honest. So, yeah, that's the way I see it in that quadrant.
Yeah, I'm going with Laurel as well. And in regards to Avella, I think that they can fill a full lineup, but they just don't have that top tier talent, right? So Jefferson Morgan, where they are good, they're going to get 6.
Yeah.
So that's why Avella will at least be able to compete as far as having all the weight classes filled, but they're not going to be able to compete with a top 5 school in Double A. But you look at Laurel, I do like them to come out ahead of that one, but I think it's going to be very close. And to your point, one of the better ones here in Double A on Wednesday night.
And I
On the
think Jefferson
third
Morgan
quad,
matches up well with Laurel. I think Jefferson Morgan and Laurel, I think they match up well. Jefferson Morgan matches up well with Laurel. I think they have a little bit of flexibility, but it's going to come down to bonus points for them. If Laurel's big guns can get some bonus points, look at heavyweight, you look at some of the other big names, and they're going to have to get they're going to have to get bonus points to really secure that victory.
yeah, and Laurel obviously very strong on the heavier weights, right? So that's where they're going to have to get those extra points without a doubt. Third quadrant, McGuffey, the 3 seed. They are the host. They will take on the winner of Bentworth and Keystone Oaks. Bentworth has a good team, so
They
having
do.
them in that pigtail round, I gotta like Bentworth there, and could challenge McGuffey. I like McGuffey to win and get to the quarters, but Bentworth is going to at least test them a little bit. Chartiers, Houston, and Burgestown, a Washington County matchup on the other side of that should be a good one, and then the quarterfinals to follow.
Yeah, and you had talked about McGuffey. We know how good they are, right? We've talked about it all season. How they're what we would say clearly the third team, right? But this is really gonna be where the rubber meets the road and see how good they actually are. Um, Chartiers Houston. That I think that's a good matchup that they have with Burgettstown. Burgettstown is one of those teams where they had to wrestle throughout the weekend in order to get their points. Chartiers Houston has wins over Knock. They beat Elizabeth Forward, so and they beat West Green. I think they have some pretty solid performances. They beat Keystone Oaks, so I'm going to go with them. But and Bentworth to win. So I have McGuffey versus Bentworth, and Chartiers Houston beating Burgettstown, and McGuffey wrestling Chartiers Houston, with McGuffey ended up winning. So, but a good quadrant nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Burgestown over Chartiers Houston. I think I'm gonna stick with the chalk here. Obviously they weren't tested in their section, but I like Burgestown just because of the couple of studs that they have to be able to get some bonus points for them. But yeah, definitely gonna go McGuffey to make it to the semifinals. Bottom half, Elizabeth Forward will wrestle Greensburg Salem. Derry gets the winner of Highland Central Valley. And obviously, we've been high on Derry all season, so you like them to get to the semis. But who do you like between EF and Greensburg Salem and Highland Central Valley?
Yeah, I mean, just flip a coin, right? I mean, Central Valley, they're 6-6 on the season this year. They lost to Freedom, they lost to Hopewell, they lost to Beth Center, and they lost to a couple AAA teams like Palmyra and Moon. I'm probably gonna go with, I'll probably go with EF to beat Greensburg Salem, and Highlands to beat Central Valley, and then Derry to beat Highlands, and Derry to beat EF to make it to the semifinals.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I think Highlands definitely will get the edge over Central Valley. The Central Valley does have a couple of studs,
And they were both
but
just at Fred Bell, so we got to see a couple head to heads there. But ultimately, I just
right.
I don't think Central Valley, where they're good, they're good, but where they're not good, they're not good.
Elizabeth Forward, I like your pick there as well. I think again to the point where with a couple of studs they have, they'll get some bonus points and help elevate. But you look at the semifinals, Jeff. They're going to start at 10 a.m. on Saturday at Peters Township. The first and third place matches to follow at 11:30. Really all chalk, right? As far as top four seeds, Burrow, Laurel, McGuffey, Derry. As far as our picks, yeah, is this a Burrell Derry matchup with McGuffey finishing in third, and who do you got
Burley.
winning the title?
What'd you call it? Burley. Yeah, it is Burley. It's a Burley.
Burrell. Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
uh, no, it's. I think it's an all of. Yeah, absolutely. I do. I think the question is can a Laurel hang with Burrell, right? That's really the question I have, because I don't think McGuffey can quite hang with Derry. I think Derry just has too much firepower, especially if Brady Brown's able to go. If Brady Brown's able to go, I think that changes the dynamics for not only that semifinals but for the finals as well. Yeah, I think Coach Dolan's probably going to be cautious of using him. Probably only if they need him. But Burrow and Laurel could end up being pretty good. I think Burrow has too much on them. I think Burrow just has, when you look from top to bottom, they have a lot of weapons. They're pretty solid throughout, and we had talked about them all year. They got to wrestle two of the top teams in the state when they went to the ultimate duels. Derry and McGuffey. There's going to be some good individual matchups, but I don't think McGuffey has quite enough, right, to really compete with. Even though I think McGuffey is a very good team, Derry's just on a different level. So I am going to go Burrell and Derry in the finals. McGuffey and Laurel going for third.
So let's start with the third place matchup, McGuffey and Laurel. I think really tail two different lineups, right, as far as where some strengths are. So you could see some big bonus points going to both sides, but at the end of the day, I think McGuffey just has too much as far as depth to be able to win the third place matchup.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. They're just, again, top to bottom. They're a very solid team. Um, they have some guys that are they're gonna fight. They're the Victor Bonuses, the Garrett Newmans. We know how good Lucas Barr is, right? But the Ely's, like, they're gonna wrestle well throughout, and I think that's important to understand, is that they're just, one, they're well coached, and two, they're solid, right? Laurel's got some good wrestlers, and they got some studs, but where they're good, McGuffey's not too bad either, right? So yeah, I agree with you.
Now the big matchup, right? Burl and Derry. It's like sacrilegious, I think, to pick against Burl.
It is.
But
It is.
but you also got Derry, right, who has just got a ton of solid freshmen. We've been talking about them all season. Who comes out on top of this?
Yeah, I mean, I've done this match a couple times on paper, and from the beginning of the year to just a couple days ago, and it's interesting if you look at the history here, because these guys have wrestled three times in the last 3 years, right? Burrow beat Derry in 2023 61-9. They beat him in 24 40-18. They beat him in 25 33-27. So the gap was 61-9 to 33-27 in a couple years. I feel like the pendulum's just going to swing in Derry's direction, and I feel like they're going to get the win there. When you look at just individual matchups, right? And Derry, they have some flexibility. They definitely have some flexibility with where they can put guys, but ultimately I think they're better off just wrestling almost just straight up, right? They have Kiesecker at 7. They have Bulger at 14, right? They have some flexibility. They could bump up those guys, but I don't see why they would. They have a couple really good guys with Dylan Bateman, Rocco DiCario at 127, 133 area. They have Camden Olson as well. They have the McNeil brothers, it's been like trying to figure out, I can't tell them apart, but I also can't figure out which one is going in which weight. They've kind of flipped weights a little bit. But really, Burl is strongest throughout that middle, right? When you look at Cam Baker, their strongest is 127 through 152, really 172, I would say, because you have Cam Baker, Carter Thomas, Jacob Stewart, Caden Crawford, Julian Bertucci, and Antonio Perkins, right? Then Ben Catula. That's really solid guys in there, right? But the problem is Derry, they're going to get a couple wins there, right? Ewan Olson and Antonio Perkins, should they wrestle, I think Ewan Olson wins that. When you look at Cam Baker, I mean, he's favored to win, but I don't know if he gets bonus points. Jacob Stewart, Camden Olson, same thing. The McNeil brothers, like, they're going to get some wins there. And then you start throwing in some of the hammers, right, with Mason Horwath. Again, if Brown can go or not, it changes the dynamics of things. Because outside of Ben Catula, they have Aiden Kuhn, Burl does, but that's about it, right? So, yeah, there's definitely some good individual matchups, but I think there's just too much bonus points. There's too many bonus points that Derry's going to collect that Burl's not going to be able to respond to and kind of come back from.
Yeah, and you look at a couple of toss-up matches, right, that could also decide it. 121 is one of those weights that, hey, who's going to win that? That's a toss-up as far as guys who are not as well known, right?
Sure.
But could end up winning it for them. You have the 285 matchup, right? Again, we've seen some crazy things happen, especially at 285. So there's a couple of weights right there that are true. Like, who knows who's going to win those matches? Brady Brown, if he doesn't go, that's another one at 89.
Yeah, and you're 100% right with 121. That is the true definition of a toss-up. You have two guys that are under 500 and can play a critical role in that dual meet.
Yeah, and it is. It's going to be very tight as far as I guess who's winning some of these matchups. But then I think the biggest factor is how Burrow always gets up for these matches, and Derry's coming in with a younger team, right? A lot of freshmen. Now, granted, freshmen who I think are they aren't going to be scared of the spotlight, right? They're going to come in and I think wrestle pretty well. They've obviously wrestled in a lot of matches in the finals in the past, but it's that Burrow factor, and I think that's what we're talking about here as far as, hey, you can't count them out.
It's there's something in the water in Burrow, right? I mean, like you said, they're gonna get up for this match, and you really hit the nail on the head. Derry is young. When you have all these freshmen, right? When we talk about Kiesecker, Bulger, Camden Olson, right? The McNeil brothers. I mean, those you're looking at four freshmen that you're relying on, right? Four freshmen that are brand spanking new, right? Even like a Ty Blasco as well. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on a 14, 15-year-old kid when you're coming into one of the biggest rivalry matches of your, your career, right? But I think Troy Dolan and his staff have done a really good job of preparing these guys for that moment, having wrestled in some of the biggest tournaments, right? These guys are all been in tough matches. So, and I saw Derry this past weekend in some good matches, and they seem to always come out on the winning end of some toss-ups. But then again, there's some other matches where I kind of was like, man, that's surprising. Like Cam Olson got pinned by Brady Kostick. You can't give up 6, right? You can't give up 6. He had a good match with Brady Slicker, lost 5-0. And then he comes back to beat Jace Walter from St. Mary's, but you got pinned by Kostick from Richland. Like, you can't give up bonus points in that type of match, right? If you're wrestling Jacob Stewart or Carter Thomas, whoever ends up there, you gotta go for the win, but you can't get pinned. So yeah, there's definitely some situational factors I think that go into this, right? The Burl versus Derry crew. The crowd's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously wearing the Burrow shirt, I'm like, I got to go with these guys. But, looking at it from a matchup perspective, Jeff, Derry does have just a little. I think to your point, right? I think it's the bonus points that are going to stick out. I think Kiesecker, Bulger, Horwat, and I think Brady Brown will probably go, right? So you're looking at 4 guys right there that could get bonus points. And on the other side, Burrow may not get them, right? I think Cam Baker could, although Dylan Bateman's super, really tough. Jacob Stewart certainly could, right? We just talked about Camden Olson giving up a fall. But, I mean, I don't know how many more Burrow. And Aiden Kuhn, I think Aiden Kuhn gets bonus for him as well. But it's going to be tight. I think it is going to be closer. And I think Burrow's going to pull out either a win or some bonus where you weren't expecting it because of the Burrow factor.
Yeah, and on paper, I have a hard time getting to 7 wins for Burrow, right? There's a lot of question marks. I think Cam Baker is probably the one that I have as the most favorite to win, right? That's it though. Like I really truly believe like most of the other matches are toss up matches. For Derry, I have 4 guys that I think are solid to win, So, when you look at it that way, it makes it look very much in Derry's favor. But as you said, there's some other factors that are in play here, and that's the fact that you're wrestling the Borough Bucks that are like literally the LA Lakers of WPIAL team wrestling. Like this may be like Boston versus LA, but it's certainly they've had their number for 3 years, as we just talked about.
So those matches at Peters Township, 10 a.m. for the semifinals, 11:30 for the first and third place matches coming up this Saturday. On the other side, Jeff, we got, first off, let's talk about the seeds before we even talk about the quadrants. Franklin Regional gets the 1, Norwin gets the 2. Tight matchup. Franklin Regional wins. We talked about, hey, this is probably the 1 versus 2 matchup. Cannon McMillan gets the 3, Connellsville the 4, Kiski the 5, North Allegheny 6, Trinity 7, Moon 8. How do you feel about the top 8 seeds?
Um, yeah, I gotta tread carefully. I like the 1 and 2 for sure. Franklin Regional and Norwin. Um, I feel like that you can't really argue. I don't think you can argue any other way for those two. Um, I don't like that Connellsville. I don't like that Connellsville's on the same side as Franklin Regional. That's just the way I feel. I don't like the fact that they're on the same side of Connellsville. Um, I almost I don't know. I almost rather see Canamac and Connellsville hit to have a rematch there because Canamac's the one where you're like, they have some losses. Now they have their lineup has shifted too, right? Their lineup has changed, and I think they're better than they were, a couple weeks ago. The question that I have there is Bryce Collins able to go? If Bryce Collins is able to go,
Yep.
because he got a little banged up in that Trinity match, right? You were there, Greg. I mean, did it look like?
Yep.
It looked like he was pretty hurt.
He was. He was wrestling on one leg. I mean, I got to give him all the credit in the world. He gutted it out to not give up 6. He could have very easily just injury defaulted and said, "Hey, I can't go." But he was literally hopping on one leg to be able to not give up 6 bonus. Like give up 6 for the team.
Yeah.
So first off, kudos to him for gutting it out. Uh, that was my question, right? I think Cannon McMillan looks solid against Trinity. I think they wrestled really well, but he is a pivotal factor in whether they come out as a top 3 team. Because I mean, and talking to Jordan Mayer, before the match, he's like, "Hey, we feel like, when we wrestled Connellsville, right? Like, hey, they had some guys up, but like our lighter guys ended up wrestling their heavier guys.
They
And so
did.
we got the win. So even though they dropped, we still had the head
They
to head
chased them and
wins.
they
And
still won.
yeah, correct. Right. So that's why he feels like, hey, just because their lineup changed and they've dropped doesn't mean that they're a better team than us because it's still the same matchup. And then, obviously they had a couple of guys out when they wrestled Kiski, North Allegheny. So, that to them, they felt like, hey, we're a top 2, top 3 seed. And obviously they wrestled well against Trinity, but I think it's that Bryce Collins factor. If he can't go, that's a big hole in their lineup.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I'm not saying and let me rephrase that. I'm not saying that Canamac shouldn't be the third seed, right? I truly believe that, like you said, they have a win over Connellsville in Connellsville, right? That to me is huge. I just wish Connellsville was separate of Franklin Regional, right? That's all, because I mean, especially with the history that they've had the last year, right? Going back and forth. Um, Norwin going into Canamac very early in the season and putting the beat down on Canamac like they did. Obviously, they deserve that second seed, right? So I'm not saying that Canamac shouldn't be a third seed. I just wish Connellsville would have been opposite of Franklin Regional somehow. Um, yeah, I mean this is I have no issues with this. I have no issues with the way things are, and to be honest with you, we kind of predicted it this way, right? We said the Franklin Regional Norwin winner was going to be 1, the loser likely going to be 2. Now, if Norwin would have won, could you have made the argument that maybe Canamac was the 2, because they beat Connellsville? Yeah, but they have blemish. They have they have some losses on their schedule, right? So, and I've heard a lot of people say, well, Franklin Regional didn't wrestle anybody. I mean, they wrestled Moon, they beat Moon, they wrestled Trinity, they beat Trinity, they wrestled some tough teams from outside of Pennsylvania. So I'm not sold on the argument that Franklin Regional hasn't wrestled anybody. And oh, by the way, and then they went and beat Norwin, right? So, yeah, I have no problem with the way things are laid out. Again, I think for purposes, you're going to get the 2 best teams in the finals. I'd like to see. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how things pan out.
And I don't know how you do it differently, Jeff, but the name that I keep looking at here is Kiski area.
Yeah,
Feeling like they probably got hosed a little bit, right? They've lost to Connellsville this season, but wins over Canamac, North Allegheny, and they have to be feeling like, hey, like we're on the outside looking in, and now we got to face the team that beat us,
yeah,
as opposed to facing a team we've already beaten or a team maybe we haven't wrestled yet. Um, is a tough spot, right? Like I don't know where, could you, but they beat North Allegheny, so it's not even like you could have put Kiski at 6 to keep them away from Connellsville. But I just keep looking at this bracket and thinking like, man, I wish there was a way Kiski and Connellsville weren't meeting in the quarters.
yeah. No, I totally, yeah. And you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. That's the thing. Like there was no easy, no matter what you did, no matter what the committee decided, there was going to be a team that had a win over another team that they were seated ahead of, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no easy way to cut it. Like you can say, well, A beat B and then C beat A, right? I mean, you're gonna have a lot of that where, hey, we beat this team already, but we lost to this team, right? Kiski having to feed right into Connellsville after Connellsville, recently just beat them. Obviously, Connellsville's happy about that, but Kiski's saying, "Hey, I wish we would have had. I wish we would have been down there at the North Allegheny spot to wrestle Canamac again in the quarterfinals, right? I mean, or
Yep.
even I don't know, say where Trinity is and feed into Norwin as opposed to feed right into Connellsville, right? I'm sure they would have rather had that. So, yeah, again, there's no easy way to do it. I we'll see how it pans out.
Well, let's break it down by quadrant. So Franklin Regional will host the top half, the first quadrant. They'll take on the winner of Peters Township and Shaler. Thomas Jefferson will take on Moon with the winners wrestling at 7:15. And Jeff, Franklin Regional Moon was a really good matchup. I know Franklin Regional didn't have Bo Fennick in that one, but that should be a good one here come tomorrow night.
You know what? It's going to be really good. And, I think a lot of people are going to probably look past this and say, well, I mean, Franklin Regional, they beat them and, they have Bo Fennick back. Not so fast. Like Moon can legitimately win this dual meet. Like I truly believe that Moon has gotten better since they wrestled Franklin Regional. I think some of their guys have improved greatly. Um, and I think they're a little bit more well balanced. They looked really really good at Allegheny County. There were some guys at Fred Bell. We talked about Bryce Thomas maybe underperforming a little bit, but Moon, Franklin Regional is gonna be a good one. They just match up really really well with Franklin Regional. A guy like Chase Smith has to come away. He has to wrestle well. He lost to Brooks Blasco in the duel with Norwin. Max Firestein, he lost to Regati before. He's got to get a win this time. If he loses, I think that match is could be in Moon's hands. Yeah, it's crazy to think that because you're like, man, they're the top seed, and they're wrestling Moon,
Yeah.
and you think this should be this should be an easy one. They just for whatever reason they just match up very well with Franklin Regional, and don't sleep on Moon. I'm telling you right now, don't sleep on Moon. Franklin Regional, they better not be looking past them because if they do, they're in a world of trouble.
Yeah, and I think we just have to make one comment about, hey, this is where we wish we had a double elimination from the round of 8, right? Because there's legitimately 8 teams here in AAA that could finish in the top 3, just depending on how they show up on a
Yeah,
given
but
night.
there's no space, Greg. We can't. How can we do it? We only have 2 mats. I mean, I just it doesn't make sense. We can't do it. There's not enough time. We got to pay officials. There's not. I mean, where are we gonna get? What are we gonna do? I can't. We can't do that.
Well, we won't beat a dead horse, but
No, I'll
that's
beat the hell out
that.
of that dead horse. I'll beat that dead horse until it's mutilated because I will stand by this. And I love the old time mentality of like, well, we've always done it this way. We can't not do it this way anymore. And it's like, did you ever think about maybe moving to a different location? Did you think about I don't know. The District 3 wrestles at a high school, Spring Grove High School, and they're able to get plenty of mats down to wrestle the consolations. But I digress.
So as far as the top quadrant goes, do you like Franklin Regional coming out on top? I know you mentioned it's going to be a close one, but do you
Yeah,
see Franklin Regional coming out on top there?
I mean, I do. Bo Fennec being back just really adds some fire to them. But they showed some fight from Bucciatoni and Perks. They have some guys that are going to fight, but they're big guns, right? They're gonna have to step up. Um, Sal Colangelo, he stepped up against Norwin, right? Could he knock off Bryce Thomas? I think he could, especially the way Bryce Thomas ended his Fred Bell tournament. Do I think he will? No, but I think that's going to give him a little bit some momentum, right, to be in that fight. So, the keys are Max Firestein. He's got to get a win, right? You're a returning state qualifier. You're one of the top kids in your class. Like you've got to get a win there. John Montgomery's got to get bonus points. Um, if Franklin Regional wrestles like they did against Norwin, they should win that dual meet. But again, like a Chase Smith, Max Firestein. I mean, Max Firestein, he was losing basically for 5 minutes and 40 seconds to Klingensmith, and ends up getting the win in ride out. So maybe not wait to the last second to get the win there. So I ultimately do have Franklin Regional coming out from there. I have Peters Township beating Shaler. I have Moon beating TJ. But I also like TJ. TJ's also a pretty solid team. I really like this quadrant, to be honest with you, and I really like all of the WPIAL AAA quadrants. But I think this one has the little bit most intrigue, where it could be the bracket could get busted wide open. I mean, TJ could realistically beat Moon, and then Franklin Regional is like, oh, we just dodged a bullet, because I think they match up very well with TJ. But I do have Moon and Franklin Regional in the quarterfinals, with Franklin Regional sneaking away with a win.
Yeah, I have the same. The Connellsville quadrant, for the 4-5 matchup, Kiski area will take on North Hills. Baldwin will take on Penn Trafford, with the winner going into Connellsville. Again, it seems like Connellsville Kiski is going to be a great matchup once again. Like Penn Trafford to beat Baldwin in that opening round matchup. But you look at Kiski area and Connellsville, and can Kiski turn the tides and come out away with a victory?
I just don't think they can. Just looking back at that result, it was a 47-22 match. There was a couple toss-up matchups. 33 Landon Lynn and Gavin Murphy. Smith and Pollock was a little bit of a toss-up match there. Um, there was certainly some areas where Kiski could flip some results potentially, but I just don't see it. I see Collinsville still winning that match. Again, when this brackets came out, I mean, Collinsville was probably thinking, well, it's at least for us to get into the top four. We're in a good position, because I think they have a good path to the semifinals. But again, like, to win it, like, they're going to have to beat a very tough Franklin Regional team, should that matchup happen. So I do like Penn Trafford beating Baldwin. I like Kiski beating North Hills. I like Collinsville beating PT, and Collinsville beating Kiski area. I think Collinsville just has they got too much, right? And I think we saw that. I mean, this was only 10 days ago, right? 12 days ago that they beat Kiski 47-22, right? I don't know how else you can dice it up unless you get the wins at 33 and 39 and not give up bonus points to Franks at 14. Both the Lilly brothers got bonus points, but I expect, and Kai Vielma. I mean, I don't see anybody in there not giving up bonus points this time around. Maybe Paxton Newell doesn't give up bonus points, but that's a lot of points to make up.
Yeah, it's a lot when you look at that 20 some point swing. I mean, it's when you start to nitpick it by 1 and 2 points, that you're going to be asking a lot of your team to be able to get that win for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like changing a result here or there or having one upset, right? There's a lot more to it. So I'd agree. I have Connells will get into the semi as well, but certainly been a great season for Kiski area, and we'll see how it plays out tomorrow night. But that should be a really good duel. Here we go as they wrestle again at the Canna McMillan quadrant. Bell Vernon will wrestle Mars, with the winner feeding into Canna McMillan, and North Allegheny will wrestle Latrobe.
Yeah, so this is definitely a good quadrant, but I think Cannon Mac is going to be poised for maybe getting some revenge, right? Avenging that loss to North Allegheny. But we had talked about it. Bryce Collins. I mean that's a pivotal and critical guy to have in your lineup, right? So let's just say if they don't have him, right, and you go back to when they did wrestle North Allegheny back in December. This was December 13th. North Allegheny won at 35-27. Now they were without a couple of their guys, right? And like John Emma was in there, but you had some guys that were missing. Calgaro ends up getting a injury default at 160 in a match that I think he should win that. Cannon also lost a team point, right? So let's just say it's 35-28, right? Let's just say everybody behaves themselves and no one gives up a team point. Dreschman was all the way up at 21. They have some flexibility with Klorsic at 14, Parker and Dreschman. They can kind of move those guys around if they have to. So I think when you look at it now, and Canamac, they got pinned at 285. Rush got pinned. I think he could maybe not give up a fall to McConaughey, but that's a big guy. Griffith Reed winning by tech over Finnegan. Finnegan's down to 45. I think you put Collier Hartman down at 39. I think you put Finnegan at 45 and Calgaro down to 52. But Bryce Collins got a tech fall last time. Those are 5 very critical points. You don't have those 5 points, or you're looking at a more uphill battle. So that's a big question mark I have is whether Bryce Collins is good to go or not.
Yeah, it's gonna be a completely different matchup. Honestly, with Canamac's lineup down, right? Dreschman against Sinan at 107, where Sinan was able to get bonus. Now Dreschman will probably get bonus on him.
Yeah.
That just starts it off, right? 121 with Gardner down. That helps out Canamac quite a bit. And then, to your point about, Bryce Collins, I think Canamac comes out on top of this one. But I think that it's the Bryce Collins factor is as to whether you're going to have to sweat it out or not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. And I think they're a completely different – Canamac's a completely different team, right? And you had mentioned Gardner. Gardner didn't wrestle. And at the time, he was at 127. But having him down at 121, I think that changes the dynamics of the match, right? It just really does. And having him in there and having Mason Calgaro not give up 6 points – he goes up 6 points. You're missing one starter, right? That's what I mean. At least a 9-point swing, potentially. Now you take Bryce Collins out. It makes it a little bit more challenging. Like you said, maybe they're having to sweat it out a little bit, but
that could be an 8-point swing right there, right?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, having these guys down at weights. I just think I think Canamac's going to have too much. I'm not saying North Allegheny got lucky, but some things really went their way. Like you lost a team point. Hernandez gets an injury default over Calgaro, which I think Mason is, whether he's at 52 or 60, he's going to get a win over Hernandez. Maybe he doesn't beat Griffin Reed, which he probably doesn't, but that's still, I would say, a toss-up match there. And not having John O'Gardner in the lineup really changes the dynamics of it. So, yeah, I just think matchup-wise, Canamac has too much, even without Bryce Collins. And that sounds crazy to say that. Like, even without one of your studs, you still are looking to upend a 35-27 result that you had, a month and a half ago.
Right. So it sounds like we both have Canamac into the semis, beating North Allegheny in that quadrant. On
And
the
I
bottom
will say
half,
North Allegheny and Latrobe should be a good match too. Like, don't sleep on Latrobe.
yeah, for sure, without a doubt. I think it's going to be a lot of these like round of 16 matchups. I think there could be some upsets, right? TJ over Moon. You got Latrobe, North Allegheny, West Allegheny taking on Trinity. Like, there's going to be some good ones that you might see an upset or two. It's just hard to pick them whenever the top 8 has been so much better. I guess not so much
I
better,
was
but they've been strong.
I was impressed with Latrobe against Connellsville, to be honest with you. Um, Brody Bronson, he beat Nolan Rice 5-4 in tiebreaker at 127. That's somebody beating a state medalist, right? That was pretty big. Piegler got a fall over Dan Smith. Yeah, I was impressed with some of their guys. So, not saying North Allegheny's going to walk right over them, but I think it's going to be a close match.
You look at the bottom quadrant, Trinity will take on West Allegheny. Armstrong and Seneca Valley will wrestle in the pigtail to take on Norwin in the round of 16, with the winners wrestling at 7:15.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like there's any? I mean, I feel like the top half is a little bit crazier than the bottom half. Would you agree there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not out of the question for Moon to potentially upset Franklin Regional, right? It'd be a bracket buster, but it's not out of the question. Kiski area, it's going to be a lot to make up over Connellsville, so you got to like them there. Buchanan, Mac, North Allegheny, Bryce Collins out, that could sweat it out. Latrobe could pull an upset over North Allegheny even. Here, I think Trinity is a good team. I just don't think they have the enough firepower to
Yeah.
keep with Norwin. I think Trinity West Allegheny could be a good match. I like Trinity win there, but I just think Norwin has too much.
Yeah, I think the best first round matchup is Trinity and West Allegheny. West Allegheny is very good; they're balanced, but Trinity is better in the upper weights, and I think they end up certain upper weights. I should say certain upper weights. But I think I think Trinity and West A is going to be a really good matchup. I think there's some really good toss up matches, 107, 114, depending on who goes where. Throughout the middle, West Allegheny is tough. It's just a matter of Trinity. They thought they had a chance in that match against Canamac, and Canamac put a kibosh on that, right? So, Trinity, depending on how healthy they are, right? Depending on if Gerba's able to go and if some other guys, and to what level they're going to be at, West Allegheny could give them a really good matchup. So, Seneca Valley, Armstrong, I don't really know. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. Like Belle Vernon Mars, and I think Belle Vernon probably wins that. Seneca Valley, Armstrong, maybe Armstrong, but I can't. I mean, I think either way, Norwin has no problem getting into the quarterfinals. I am going to go with Trinity, but Trinity and West Allegheny is going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you like Norwin to get to the semis?
I do. I have Norwin getting to the semifinals regardless of who's there, whether that's Trinity or West Allegheny. Like I said, I do have Trinity, but I don't. I think Norwin's sitting pretty. I think they're sitting really pretty. And I honestly think they're sitting pretty with the whole bottom half. To be honest with you, I don't like Bryce Collins in or not. I think Norwin's just in a really good position. I just think they're in the driver's seat on that bottom half.
Well, let's go ahead and look at that. We can start at the bottom half, Jeff. So semifinals for AAA will be at 1:30 at Peters Township. First and third place matches will be at 3 o'clock. So right now, both of us, we have chalk, right? Going, both for double A and triple A. So committee's probably like, what double elimination? We got the best 4 teams in the semifinals.
Yeah, right.
But,
Okay.
but you look at Norwin and Canamac. So we could start there since you mentioned it. Norwin just too much in your opinion?
I mean, it was 31-24 last time. Um, both teams have guys at different weights. Clip is down to 27. He can bounce around. He beat John Emma last time 8-5. Gardner wrestled at 27, beat Brooks Blasco. Blasco just wrestled at 33 and beat Chase Smith. I think Blasco is much better today than he was then. Um, they didn't have Cash Mitchell in. Cash Mitchell's a potential guy that they can throw in there. Um, I just think you look at Jack White, Noah Curran, and Riley Schaefer. Riley Schaefer was able to beat John Hunter 4-0 last time. Yeah, I think I think I think Kane and Mac's gonna have a. I don't know how much they're gonna have answers to everything that Norwin is gonna throw at them. If you put Dreschman down at 7, should get bonus points on Botera. 14. I see. I would almost put it like keep Dreschman up at 14, and get bonus points at 14. Not give up bonus points potentially at 7. You're gonna give up bonus points no matter who you put out at 121, whether that's Gardner or not. But I don't know. I mean, Collier Hartman's he decisioned Klingensmith last time 7-3. That was at 45. If he's down at 39, I think he gets bonus points. The question is, can Finnegan beat Klingensmith? I don't know. Curran teched him last time at 52. So I just look at those weights and I have question marks. Last time, and to be honest with you, Ken and Mac from Bryce Collins and Braden Collins, they only got 6 points combined out of both of them. Now Santino Brasco was their guy at 215. He has not been in the lineup, so that certainly hurts them. But Bryce Collins only beat Tanner Schaefer 6-2. That's somebody who I think you should definitely get bonus points on. Braden Collins, I think should have gotten bonus points on Brasco, but he didn't. So let's take Bryce Collins out of the equation. I definitely think Norwin wins that match.
Yeah, without Bryce Collins, it's too big of a hole, right, for Cannon McMillan to make up. When you look at the bottom half, Jeff, and you mentioned maybe leaving Dreschman at 14. The issue is they have Parker Kolarczyk who's been wrestling at 14 and wrestling pretty well,
Yeah,
right? So
he has.
If you put Dreschman there, get bonus on Botera, that's instead of giving up a major, let's say you get a major, if Dreschman doesn't do more, and then let's say Kolarczyk ends up getting a decision win at 14,
and I think
at
he
the
could
very
get more
least.
than a decision there too.
Yeah, I mean he could get bonus, right? So you're talking about at least a 6 to 7 point swing right there at 7-14. A couple of those matches could go either way, right? You mentioned Gardner Blasco, for example. Emma Klippa was a close one last time.
But
But
Gardner and
yeah,
Blasco are at different weights now. Like Gardner's down to 21 and Blasco's up to 33. So like you can throw that out the window essentially. Like that's what it's the matchups are so much different now from the first time because of the weight difference.
yes, but you got to imagine they're going to keep Gardner away from Landon Sidden too.
Yeah. So I mean, do you bump everybody up? You put Gardner up at 27, Emma up at 33. Hartman up at.
Well, I mean, if you weigh both Soul and Gardner in at 21, then you have the choice of which one goes where, right?
Yeah. Put Soul on Sidney.
Right, and just do it really the same way as you did, in December, right?
Yeah.
Have Gardner wrestle Blasco, Soul wrestle Sidden. So there, I mean, you don't see much change. I mean, Blasco might win that match, right? So that could be a 6 point swing for the Norwin side. But that's a matchup Gardner won last time. Just looking at the Cannon McMillan side, right? Like Calgary gave up a major, but it was only 8-0. both Collinses. Let's say Bryce does wrestle, they both get bonus. Owen Rush didn't wrestle in the matchup, right? So I mean, I'm not saying that Cam McMillan wins, but it could be closer. It could be
Yeah,
closer.
no, it definitely could. I mean, it definitely could be closer. It was just such a resounding win for Norwin the first time around. It's hard to get that out of my mind. And both these teams are different, right? We had talked about both these teams having some changes in personnel, but yeah, I mean it's going to be a good match. I mean, I hope Bryce Collins is in because then I really do think you can flip a coin. But a lot went Norwin's way last time, getting some of the bonus point wins that they did. But I thought, John O'Gardner beating Blasco was big. But again, I think Blasco's a different wrestler now. Um, John Emma, he loses a Clippa. That's a match he can easily flip. I mean, John Emma, he's kind of like a roller coaster. Like one day he beats Dom Canale and then he gets tech by him, right? So I think if the John Emma that beat Dom Canale shows up, he can certainly win that matchup and have a swing match there. But yeah, I mean I don't know. I just think Norwin's they're pretty solid from top to bottom. There's not too many holes, right? There's not a ton of holes. And not saying Canamac has, I would say Canamac only has a couple, right? And if Bryce Collins is not in, then that changes things tremendously.
Yeah, without Bryce Collins, they do not defeat Norwin, right? I think they get to the semifinals, but I don't think they beat Norwin in that matchup. So
Right.
his health is a huge factor. It's a huge factor, which we've been talking about a lot tonight. Um, at the end of the day, I think I'm going to go with Norwin to win over Cam McMillan, but I do think it's going to be closer than the 7 points last time, and I think Collins does wrestle, especially if they don't need him Wednesday and he doesn't need to wrestle. I think he ends up going on Saturday, but we'll see how his health is.
Yeah. So we have Franklin Regional, Collinsville, Canamac, and Norwin. What do you got from there?
So where are you seeing on the? So I think we both like Norwin to advance to the final. Franklin Regional Connellsville. How do you see that one playing out?
Whew. That's a great question, Greg. You got a lot of good questions. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I don't have a scientific answer for you. All I know is it's going to be a good match. I mean, let's just look at their history. And last year, they wrestled in twice in 7 days. Franklin Regional won 32-25 in the WPIAL championships, and then Collinsville beat them 28-22. Collinsville has the last two before that in 24 and 23. They beat them. Um, you know, I look at this and I've done this matchup 100 times. I feel like too. Um, there's a lot of good matchups throughout here. I just think Connellsville. I think Jeremy Gray being down at 107 is huge for them. Zach Franks and Bo Fennick could be a deciding factor, right? And Bo Fennick just coming back from injury to wrestle a senior and established wrestler like Zach Franks, that's a tall task, right? Titus Colangelo and Tommy Gretz, Nolan Rice should get bonus points. Landon Lynn should get a win. Chase Smith, he's got to be, whether he's at 33 or 39. I mean, like, I wouldn't look past Daniel Smith. Daniel Smith's dangerous. Vielma and Firestein. Kai's got to get some bonus points, and I think I look at Luke Lilly and Michael Ruan. I think that's a good matchup there. I think that's a toss-up matchup. Perks, Cartwright are two guys that I think are critical in Franklin Regional should they win, because Collinsville's not great at 189, 215, or heavyweight, right? Hollis is not bad, right? But I think if you put Montgomery on him, you get bonus points there. But yeah, it's I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect from the 72 up. You know, I think you could put Cartwright up. You could put Perks up to 72 and beat Cooper Lembo potentially. But I just think Collinsville from 114 to 160, from 114 to 160, there's not a lot of teams that have as much firepower as they do, right? So winning some of those close matches is going to be critical. It's going to be a dogfight. I do think Collinsville is going to bring, you know, they're going to bring it, but I don't know. I've done this match so many times. I've gotten different results every single time. So I feel like I need to flip a coin. What's your opinion, Greg?
Well, I think it could come down to the flip, right? Because I think Franklin Regional could and probably should bump their entire lineup from 45 on up. It just depends on who they can fill in at 45 to take on Vioma. But if you're willing to, even if you're willing to give up 6
See,
to Vioma, right?
I think that's a bad choice. I don't think. Yeah, maybe you put. I guess so.
I mean, then you had Firestein against Luke Lilly, right? Ruan against Jake Lilly. Those are gonna be good matchups. Then you have Perks and Lembo, but then you have Cartwright, who should get bonus at 89. You have McManus, who would probably get bonus at 215, and Montgomery would get bonus at 285. So, you know, as opposed to 285 being a coin flip as a match.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would necessarily do that. I think you're risking a lot there. I think you're risking max. You could lose. That could be a wash, right? You could forfeit to Kai and give up 6. I don't think Max gives up 6 to Kai, but I think Max could lose to Luke Lilly for sure. I think Ron and him and Jake Lilly, I think that's a toss up, to be honest with you. I think so. I don't know if the risk, I don't know if the reward is worth the risk there that you do. I don't think Collinsville bumps. I think Collinsville wrestles exactly like they do.
Oh, for sure.
Unless you think, yeah, I don't see them bumping. You know, I think 89. You have to put Cartwright. You have to put Cartwright on Little, and you got to get bonus there. You got to get 6, right? Cartwright bumps up to 89. See, I think you put Cartwright up at 89. I think probably I would say Montgomery stays at 215, gets bonus points. And I think Farrell goes up to heavyweight. That's what I think. So I think heavyweights is big there with Hollis and Farrell. I think that could be a huge matchup. Again, I think Montgomery gets 6. I think Cartwright on Lytle, he's got to get bonus points. I think you put Perks. Yeah, I don't know. Chase Smith's got to get a win. If Chase Smith doesn't get a win, you know, that's a big problem. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I think 7 could be a toss up match. 285 or toss up matches.
I think Colangelo should win that one.
But does he get bonus?
I don't know if he gets bonus, but he gets a decision, right? I think he gets a win there. I think I clearly favor Colangelo in that match. Franks and Fennick is so. If I'm looking at any of these matches, if it's Franks versus Fennick at 14, that's a critical matchup. If Fennick can win, Frank Regional's in a much better position. I just don't know how healthy. I just don't know. I mean, he's only wrestled twice, right? I can't say that he's already going to be wrestling a couple times since then, right? He could be wrestling that Seymour, that from Moon, Hayden Seymour, or Rehack, depending on who wins that matchup there. So, 27 is a problem for 27 is a problem for Franklin Regional. So Nolan Rice, they certainly could get bonus points because I don't think Sal and Nassif can get down to 27. So I think you're going to give up bonus points at 127.
And Rice has to get 6 there.
Yeah, I agree. I think for sure he has to get 6. But I think if he gets 6, Gretz gets 3, Franks gets 3, Colangelo gets 3. Collinsville's winning that match. They're winning that way. Lynn gets a win. Chase Smith gets a win. Vielma wins. Ron wins. Lily wins. Who do you? If you, I don't know who you, because if you put Cartwright up to 89, which I think you probably do, I don't know. My head's hurting, Greg. My head hurts. I've done this matchup so many times, and again, I've gotten different results each time.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun, without a doubt. Probably, again, we'll go down. I think all 4 matches are going to go down to the wire, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
On Saturday. So, as expected, right? I mean, this was a true toss-up year as far as who's going to get in and who's going to be, going on as a top 4 team. So, to me, I think Franklin Regional has a little more flexibility to make some moves. Connell's going to wrestle straight. And I think Franklin Regional has a little bit more flexibility to where they might be able to pick up a few bonus points here or there, but they got to win the matches they need to win. Like you said, Fennec at 14 as an example.
Yeah, and that's where Collinsville's good. I'm going with Collinsville. So I have Collinsville over Franklin Regional. I know Matt Leaby's not going to be happy with me, but I don't know. Collinsville's, they're hot right now. They're hot. They got the hot hand. And Franklin Regional, I think there's too many question marks. Chase Smith losing to Brooks Blasco, that's a question mark for me. Bo Fennick and Zach Franks, that's a question mark for me. You put Max in at 45. If you bump him up, I don't see how it benefits you in the long run. Cartwright, Perks, and Farrell are very critical. You can put Farrell and Montgomery both in at 215 and heavyweight, and they have to get bonus points. They absolutely have to get bonus points. They gotta get 12 points in each of those matches, which they should. Right? They should. But I think the flip's important. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens, Gregory.
Yeah. It's gonna be tight. I'm gonna go Franklin Regional. Matt, remember that. So don't be hooking Jeff up anymore. Just hook me up because he's lost your loyalty. But no, I think it's gonna come down to the wire. That 72 to 285 scares me for Connellsville, and I think that's where Franklin Regional can get some bonus and really catch up on things. So as long as they can get those bonus and then pull out a couple of wins here, and I know you don't agree, but I think Firestein they can bump a little bit. I think Franklin Regional can squeak by on this one, but it's going to be tight, right? I guess regardless, who's your top 3? I guess, right? Because you and I have different matchups going for first or third, but who's your top 3?
Yeah, I mean, so my top 3: Collinsville 1, Norwin 2, Franklin Regional 3, Canamac 4.
Yeah, I'm Franklin Regional 1, Norwin 2, Connellsville 3, Canamac 4. So we got the same 3 going
But realistically, Greg, it could be completely opposite. It could be Canamac 1, Franklin Regional 2, Collinsville 2, right? I mean, Canamac can win it, Collinsville can win it, Franklin Regional win it, Norwin can win it. Moon could win it. No, actually, I don't know if Moon could win it, but Moon could beat Franken Regional, right? I mean, Moon could beat Franken Regional. Um, I honestly, truly, wholeheartedly believe any one of those top four seeds can win it. Um, it's all about matchups. It's all about bonus points. It's all about the flip. It's all about health. And I just, man, honestly, this is the first year in a long, long time where I honestly believe that Fort, like every other year, you're like, oh yeah, like they have a shot, but really in your head you're thinking like they need a prayer. Um, I honestly believe all four of these teams can win a WPIAL title on Saturday, all four of them. And I would not be surprised if Canamac won a WPIAL title. I would not be surprised if Norwin won a WPIAL title. I would be surprised if Moon won a WPIAL title, but outside of those top four, I really just I'm going with the gut. I'm going with my gut. That's I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the year, right? We've talked about how there's so many teams that could compete for a title, and I'll tell you this much: I'm excited to be there on Saturday, right? That for the AAA side. I mean, you could point to the AA as an example, right? Like, hey, we pretty much have a good idea of who those top two teams are, and really who those top three are. AAA,
We do
boy,
not.
it's my confidence meter is extremely extremely low as far as the ranking of 1 through 4 that I mentioned, because I to your point, I Canamac could easily be the champs if Bryce Collins is healthy.
Yep.
That it's truly a toss up.
Yep. Yep. No, I agree with you.
So
And just looking at that Franklin Regional Collinsville matchup, should it happen, there's just so many different ways it could go. And I see what you're saying about the 52 to 72, or really 52 to 285. I mean, realistically, 52 to 285, Franklin Regional could win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They could win all 6 of those matches, right? You can
yeah,
win 6 of those. So they really only need to win one other, and that's at 107. I think you get a win there. Um, the problem is I just don't know if you win all 6 of those matches. I just don't. Um, so yeah, we're gonna see, man. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
no doubt about it. So make sure you head out to Peters Township this coming Saturday. Should be a good one. See who ends up being the AA and AAA WPIL champions. We'll recap it for you next week, and we'll also preview the state tournament as well. And should be a lot of fun to see how this all plays out. We got 2 weeks of team left, and then we're right into the individual season with 4 weeks straight of section, WPIAL regional, and state tournament. So a lot still to come. But for Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. We appreciate you watching and listening in.